presentation. I can see Olena. Is Pep here as well? I hope so. I think so. He's here. Okay. All right. Let me just, I'm just going to make a brief introduction then. So I'm beginning with Olena. Olena Rossi holds a PhD in language testing from Lancaster University in the UK. Her primary expertise lies in item writing for language assessment. Olena is based in Italy, working as an independent assessment consultant and researcher. With a focus on research, she explores the integration of AI into the test development process. Beyond academia, she actively contributes as an item writer and item quality reviewer, drawing from her practical experience in utilizing AI for crafting test items. And Josep Montcada, PEP, is currently in charge of language test design and language evaluation at the Department of Education of the Generalitat de Catalunya. He coordinates the development of high-stakes certification tests for the official language schools in Catalonia in 8 different languages and at levels B1, B2, C1 and C2. He trained in language assessment at Lancaster and has attended numerous seminars and workshops on this topic, both as a participant and as a speaker. So, Olena and Pep, if you're ready, I'm going to ask you to begin. Share your screen and begin.
Yes, 1 second. I'm sharing the screen. Well, please tell me if you can see the presentation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm starting. The topic today, I'm going to talk about using ChatGPT to generate true-false reading comprehension items. Yeah, right. So research into using AI for true-false item generation is limited because most studies have focused on multiple choice question generation. In the studies that exist, 2 main approaches have been used. The first is template-based systems, which apply rule-based natural language processing techniques to modify individual words in the input text. For example, the latest study by Fatih and Romadoni suggests 4 methods: replacing conjunctions, using synonyms for true statements and replacing them with antonyms for false ones, adding or removing negation, or changing numbers. For an experienced item writer, it becomes obvious that this approach would result in items focusing on minor details and promoting word spotting strategies. Another method by Zhou and colleagues, they call the generative framework, and they use the mask and fill strategy, where first a rule-based system identifies keywords, and then BART, which is a pre-trained transformer, fills in the gaps using its context knowledge on the subject. Despite claims of generating logical and relevant questions, flaws were found in examples. Similar issues to template-based approach, such as word spotting, assessing trivial information, while some items also were unanswerable, likely due to BART using contexts outside the input text. Overall, previous attempts at true-false item generation suffered from low item quality and also required specialist knowledge for implementation, making them inaccessible to most teachers, while true-false items are most widely used in classroom assessment. As generative AI models continue to improve, we thought it would be worth exploring how they can address this task. Therefore, our research question was, can generative AI produce high-quality true-false reading comprehension items at B1, B2, CFR levels? In our study, we used ChatGPT 4.0, which was the latest version of the language model at the time of the study, and it also remains the most popular variant of ChatGPT today. The study was conducted with the Department of Education and Professional Training of Catalonia, which manages official schools of languages and which administers exams in various languages, including English. In the study, we focused on the English reading comprehension test at B2 and B1 proficiency levels. These tests use authentic texts and selected response formats, multiple choice and true-false. Language teachers are trained as item writers, with test papers then reviewed by assessment specialists within the department. Given the high volume of tests and the rise of generative AI in test development, the department is exploring AI's potential for item creation. Study methodology. First, we use task specifications to create detailed prompts for ChatGPT to generate items. We had 6 input tasks per level, and we did 3 rounds of item generation per text using progressive prompting technique. A log was kept documenting prompt modifications and documenting the items generated. During generation, items were briefly evaluated for most obvious flaws, and the best 5 to 10 items were selected for further review. 2 assessment specialists independently reviewed these items using checklists and providing qualitative comments. A meeting was then held to select the best 2 tasks per level, 4 in total, for trialing with students. I'd like to emphasize here that the items were only reviewed by the reviewers. They were not edited in any way because we were interested in seeing how well ChatGPT is able to produce usable items. The tasks were then trialed with hundreds of students across 30 schools under exam conditions. Students were also asked to give us feedback on item clarity and difficulty. Test scores were then analyzed using item response theory, and data from reviewer and student evaluations, as well as item generation logs, were analyzed qualitatively. For the item generation step, in my GPT environment, a dedicated GPT was tailored for the project. It received comprehensive instructions, and accompanying documents were uploaded, including test specifications, retired tasks as examples, and true-false item writing guidelines. In addition to that, for each round of item generation, we used the detailed prompt aligned with the task specifications. The prompt was then updated iteratively based on the generated output. This is what we found. We found during item generation that ChatGPT often focused on trivial detail like numbers or names. You can look at this example. In the text, it is in 1945, and ChatGPT created an item just by replacing it with 1950. Such items encourage word spotting instead of genuine comprehension, and this issue was largely addressed in subsequent rounds with targeted prompts, such as do not target numbers or do not target geographical names. We also found that many items had considerable lexical overlap with the text. Like this one, it is an extreme example where ChatGPT just lifted an entire sentence from the text to use as an item. Such items suffer from the same problem. They encourage word spotting. In this case, however, direct prompting did not result in substantial improvement. This is how we try to prompt ChatGPT. We fed into ChatGPT the flawed item. We explained why it is flawed, and then we gave it an explicit instruction to use reformulation and paraphrase instead. This is what we received as a result. You can see that although ChatGPT claims that the revised item has been paraphrased to avoid direct borrowing from the text, the item still has considerable lexical overlap with the text. And this is what ChatGPT seems to understand by paraphrase, replacing only one word in the lifted stretch of the language. To address this problem in the later generations, we then adopted the following approach, which helped, though not entirely. We first asked ChatGPT to generate a summary of the text. Then we instructed ChatGPT to create items based on the summary rather than on the original text. This method reduced lexical overlap because ChatGPT was no longer using the original text, and it also eliminated the possibility for ChatGPT to target minor details in items because it forced it to focus on key information because that was the information included in the summary. Another thing we found was that ChatGPT, when left uninstructed, tends to generate more true items than false ones. This was addressed by directly instructing it on the desired number of true and false items. ChatGPT also tended to be better at generating true items, and it struggles with creating original false ones. Typically, when generating false items, it used one of the two strategies. It would modify a minor detail in the text. For example, here you see in the text that is by the end of this year, it produced a false item using by the end of next year instead. Or it also created items which had no information to answer this item in the text. For example, in the text, it says that the town has no TV or radio, while the item created says that the village where Charlie played the concert had no internet access. We might assume that if there is no TV or radio, there is no internet access either, but this item would pose difficulty to test takers because this assumption cannot be verified with the text. In subsequent rounds, ChatGPT received more detailed instructions, such as never target numbers and items. To generate false items, introduce made up but plausible information that contradicts some information in the text, target only main ideas and important details, and so on. This led to some improvement, but the output remained inconsistent, and the issue often resurfaced. At present, ChatGPT seems to struggle with intentionally creating false statements, although, as we all know, it is quite adept at generating false statements unintentionally. This issue has been noted in recent research, with findings showing that AI-generated incorrect options are often implausible and flaws persist even after requests for improvement. It appears that AI has searched a technological frontier, in the words of Chun and Bali, as generating plausible false statements requires pragmatic reasoning about what would be a believable mistake, something that AI struggles with. For the next stage of our study, the items selected during the item generation went for evaluation by 2 professional reviewers. During subsequent trialing, students were asked to complete a brief feedback questionnaire. Reviewers found that many items, in particular at B1 level, seemed too easy because they used the same language as the text, leading to word spotting. This is the issue of lexical overlap, which I already mentioned. It was noted during item generation, but it was not fully resolved. Student feedback supported reviewers' observation, with a larger number of students finding B1 tasks easy rather than difficult. Interestingly, reviewers also pointed out that some items were double-barreled, like this one. Private patronage can offer European cultural institutions more flexibility and independence. Or another example, the boys looked cheerful and energetic when they were picked up. If only one word in the pair is true and the other is false, is the item true or false? And this was exactly the problem with the second example, and it was noted in the student feedback. This student, you can see, wrote that in the text, the boys were enthusiastic and excited, so they were cheerful, but at the same time they were tired. So cheerful is true, energetic is wrong. Is the item true or false? This problem seems to arise from ChatGPT's tendency to use paired words in its writing style, and this can lead to flawed items. I'm sure that those of you who are familiar with ChatGPT writing style will recognize this peculiarity, and it is crucial for us to watch it during item production, as this style can unintentionally cause issues. Item response theory analysis of test taker responses was conducted in Jamovi using the dichotomous rush model. The right map indicates that most B1 items were easier than the average ability of the test takers. This can be partly explained by items that were overly easy due to lexical overlap, as I've already mentioned. However, I'd also like to note that the test takers were slightly above the B1 level because they have just completed B1 course and they have started B2 course in September, while the trial occurred in early October. For logistical reasons, we had to have it in October, and we intentionally chose test takers who were slightly above the required proficiency level rather than those who would be much below it. But what is important for us is that most items showed a good fit, performing as intended with no unexpected response patterns. On the screen, you can see task 1 individual item curves, where the observed scores align really well with model predicted scores, even though they are clustered at the higher end of the latent trait scale due to the generally strong performance of the test takers. And the same was true for task 2. For B2 items, they seem to be slightly better matched to test taker ability, although a number of items is still too easy due to the same reasons. And just like for B1 items, most B2 items showed a good fit, with observed scores aligning well with model predicted scores. So overall, the test performance statistics shows us that most items performed well, although they were somewhat easy for the students they were trialed on. However, it's important to note that these items represent only 11% of the total items generated for the study after passing through 2 selection stages. This is standard practice. For example, Italian colleagues reported even lower acceptance rates for trialing the Duolingo interactive reading task. This highlights a key consideration for AI-based item generation. Only a small proportion of items are usable. The items that made it to the trial stage were not ideal, as reflected in student feedback. Therefore, all AI-generated items require human attention. True-false items are most commonly used for classroom assessment, and it would be unwise for a busy teacher to generate a batch of true-false items shortly before a lesson and present them to students without any modification. While the items may appear to be standard true-false items, they are likely to contain many flaws. To guide true-false item writing with AI, we propose a following set of review questions based on the most common flaws that we found in AI-generated items in our study. Does the item target important information or a trivial detail? Is there significant lexical overlap between the item and the text? Can the item be answered through word spotting? Is there a roughly equal number of true and false items? Are the false items plausible? Are the false items answerable using information from the text? Are there any double-barreled items? For the item generation process, we found that some approaches worked better than others and would like to share some recommendations. Our first recommendation is to always generate many more items than needed to allow for selection. For example, if you need 5 items, generate 25. We also found that a summary method, generating a text summary first and then creating items from the summary rather than the original text, helped to focus AI on key information and to avoid trivial details. However, do always check the AI-generated summary, because despite being one of AI's strengths, it still needs human oversight. We found that instructing ChatGPT to improve flawed items didn't work. So we would recommend, instead of trying to make AI to improve generated flawed items, to improve the prompt instead, and then generate new items using the improved prompt. Generally, we found that reasoning with AI doesn't work. For example, feeding in flawed items to AI, writing lengthy explanations for why they are flawed, and giving them examples and so on, it all did not work. Detailed explanations only seem to confuse AI, while simple direct instructions yielded better results. Be mindful to not overcomplicate the prompt. Long, complex prompts led to uneven performance in our study. AI seems to have a limited attention span, and it tends to ignore parts of very long instructions. It's also impossible to predict which instructions it would attend to and which it would ignore, which makes the resulting output very uneven. So we would suggest to keep prompts simple and concise, probably just a list of bullet points with very clear and focused instructions. Finally, do bear in mind that AI doesn't have an ego and emotional side to appease to. So polite language such as please and so on, very important in human communication, doesn't impact on AI's response, and it will only lengthen the prompt. That's why direct instructions such as each item must be maximum of 10 words or don't target numbers are much more effective. These are the references, and thank you so much.